There is a difference between love that is offered freely and love that must be chased. The moment you feel the need to beg for love, you are no longer receiving. It has become a transaction, and often a painful one. True love is not earned by proving your worth. It is recognized in your presence. Yet many people carry the wound of not feeling enough, and so they bend, they shrink, they please, they beg, hoping to be chosen. But to beg for love is to forget your dignity. It is to hand over your self-worth in exchange for attention. The path of mastery begins with stillness, and stillness teaches you this. What is meant for you will not require your suffering. What truly loves you will not ask you to abandon yourself. So today we speak not about love from others, but about the love you must never abandon, your love for your own being. Love in its purest form is not something that can be forced, chased, or demanded. It is something that is mirrored back to us when our inner world is aligned. When we speak of love as a reflection, we are speaking of the natural law that governs energy. What you carry inside will manifest around you. If you walk through life with the belief that you are unworthy of love, you will unconsciously seek out people who confirm that belief. Not because you want to suffer, but because the mind finds familiarity more comfortable than truth. This is why love cannot be separated from self-perception. The kind of love you attract reflects the level of consciousness you hold about yourself. When you think that love is something to be earned, you start playing a dangerous game. You try to please, to adapt, to mold yourself into an image that you think others will desire. But the cost is high. You disconnect from your authenticity, you lose your voice, you forget what you truly want because you are too busy scanning the world to see what will make others choose you. This creates a false self, a version of you designed not to express your truth, but to avoid rejection. And whatever love comes to that false version is not truly for you. It is for the role you are playing. And that kind of love always feels unstable, because you know deep down it is not anchored in truth. In the monastery, we are taught that a calm lake reflects the moon clearly, but a disturbed surface breaks the reflection. Similarly, if your inner world is turbulent with self-doubt, fear, and neediness, the love you attract will also be distorted. Not because the world is cruel, but because you are projecting confusion outward and receiving confusion back. On the other hand, when you cultivate inner stillness, when you know who you are, when you carry dignity in your presence, you do not chase love, you become it, you carry it. And in that energy, people respond differently. They feel something grounded, something rare. They do not feel your need, they feel your peace. And that is magnetic. Many people confuse attraction with alignment. They believe if someone is drawn to them, it must be love. But attraction is not always a sign of resonance. Sometimes it is a sign of shared wounding. A person who does not love themselves may be drawn to someone who also doubts their worth. They may recognize each other's pain and call it chemistry. But that kind of bond is not healing, it is recycling. It brings temporary relief, but eventually triggers the same old insecurities. This is why doing inner work is essential. You cannot expect deep, lasting love from the outside if you have not first created depth and stability inside. Your value is not defined by whether or not someone else chooses you. Love is not a trophy you win after performing well enough. It is a recognition, a resonance, a natural unfolding between souls who meet each other as they are, not as they pretend to be. If you believe love must be earned by suffering, then you are confusing love with approval. And approval is always conditional. True love sees you and stays, not because you are perfect, but because there is honesty in your presence. Honesty is magnetic. Pretending is exhausting. And begging is always a sign that you have abandoned your center. When you truly understand your own value, you stop entertaining connections that require you to diminish yourself. You stop explaining why you deserve to be treated well. You stop waiting for someone to see you because you already see yourself. And this shift in energy changes everything. You do not become arrogant, you become quiet, calm, clear. You no longer rush, you observe. You do not cling, you flow. Because you have tasted what it feels like to rest in your own being, and you will not give that peace away in exchange for temporary affection. This does not mean you become cold or detached. On the contrary, you become more open, but open with discernment. You listen not just to what people say, but how they treat you. You observe their consistency, their silence, their effort, and most importantly, you observe your own energy around them. Do you feel expanded, or do you feel like you are shrinking? Do you feel seen, or do you feel invisible unless you try harder? The answers to these questions are not found in their words, they are found in your body. Your body always knows when you are betraying yourself to feel loved. And that betrayal may feel subtle at first, but over time, it will make you restless, bitter, exhausted. When you stop begging to be loved, you do not become lonely, you become free. Free from the endless chase, free from the illusion that your worth is determined by how someone else treats you. You begin to embody the truth that you are already whole. And when you walk through the world with that awareness, you stop seeking love. You start attracting it. Not the kind of love that requires effort to maintain, but the kind of love that arrives quietly, grows steadily, and rests peacefully in truth. That love is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is not earned, it is recognized. And it always begins within. When you find yourself in a position where you are constantly seeking reassurance, constantly waiting to be seen, chosen, or appreciated, something within you has already been forgotten. That something is your inherent value. To beg for love is not just a behavior, it is a sign of disconnection from yourself. And once that inner recognition is lost, you begin to hand over your power in the hope that someone else will restore what you should have never abandoned. But no one can give you your value back, because it was never lost, it was only ignored. Hidden beneath layers of doubt, fear, and the belief that you must earn what should be freely offered. When a person forgets their value, their actions begin to reflect scarcity. They overextend, over-explain, overcompensate. They confuse pleasing others with being lovable. They endure mistreatment in the name of patience, thinking that tolerance is proof of love. But deep within, they are hoping that their sacrifices will finally be noticed, that their effort will buy them affection, that if they just become enough, someone will finally stay. But love that must be bought is not love. It is negotiation, it is imbalance. And it always leaves you feeling empty, because no matter how much you give, it will never feel like enough when you are giving from a place of lack. This cycle is not born from weakness, it is born from wounding. Often the wound is old. It may come from childhood, from the absence of emotional safety, from relationships where love was conditional, and so the mind learns, if I do more, they will love me. If I am perfect, they will not leave. But these are survival strategies, not expressions of truth. They may have kept you safe once, but now they are keeping you small. To break this cycle, you do not need to fight for love. You need to remember that you never had to. To return to your value is not about building confidence through external validation. It is about returning to stillness. In stillness, you hear the part of you that is untouched by rejection. In stillness, you meet the version of you that does not perform, the version that simply is. That version may have been buried under noise, but it has always been there. It does not need to beg. It does not need to chase. It only needs to be remembered. From this space of remembrance, your actions begin to change. You do not offer love as a transaction. You offer it as an expression. You give not to receive, but because giving is natural to you. And if it is not received, you do not collapse. You do not become bitter, because your self-worth is no longer tied to whether or not another person responds. You know who you are, and that knowing becomes your anchor. Others may not always see your value. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to never forget it yourself. Because the moment you forget it, you begin to allow things that shrink your spirit. You begin to interpret silence as punishment, distance as your fault. You begin to doubt your instincts, your boundaries, your needs. And that is where suffering begins. Not in the behavior of others, but in your willingness to interpret their behavior as a reflection of your worth. But when you live in alignment with your value, the same situations do not affect you the same way. If someone walks away, you let them. If someone takes you for granted, you step back, not to punish, not to manipulate, but because you have remembered what you deserve. Your silence becomes a boundary. Your stillness becomes a statement. And people feel that. They feel when you are no longer willing to beg. They feel when your energy no longer clings. And in that space, the truth of the connection is revealed. Either it deepens or it disappears. But either way, you remain grounded, because you are no longer seeking permission to be loved. This is not about arrogance. It is about alignment. It is not about rejecting love. It is about refusing to accept love that requires you to reject yourself. It is about choosing peace over performance. And that choice is made daily in the thoughts you entertain, in the way you speak to yourself, in the relationships you cultivate. Every time you choose yourself with gentleness, every time you honor your needs without apology, every time you walk away from what confuses your heart, you reinforce the message: I remember who I am, and I will not forget for the sake of being chosen. In this remembrance, you become free, not because you no longer want love, but because you no longer confuse love with sacrifice. You no longer trade your light for momentary warmth. You no longer shrink in the hope of fitting into someone else's story. You begin to write your own, quietly, patiently, without urgency. And the love that finds you there, the love that meets you in that stillness, will not need convincing. It will recognize you the way you have finally remembered to recognize yourself. True love does not arrive wrapped in conditions or dressed in expectations. It does not walk in and ask you to become someone else before it says. It sees you as you are and still remains. When love is real, you do not need to perform. You do not need to shape-shift or water yourself down to be more digestible. In the stillness of authenticity, love either recognizes you or it does not. But the need to perform arises when you believe that your natural being is not enough, when you doubt that your presence holds value on its own. Then you begin to wear masks, you begin to modify your truth, you begin to offer what you think is lovable instead of what is real. And that offering may attract attention, it may even bring temporary affection, but it will never feel fulfilling. Because deep down you will always know it wasn't you they chose, It was the role you played. There is a quiet suffering in constantly having to adjust who you are in order to be accepted. That suffering creates inner tension, and that tension keeps you from ever fully relaxing into love. Instead of feeling safe, you feel observed. Instead of feeling free, you feel evaluated. It becomes a performance, and performances are exhausting. They take effort. They require control, and every moment of control pulls you further away from natural connection. Love that is built on performance needs constant reinforcement because you're afraid that if you stop playing the role, you will lose a relationship. And in that fear, you begin to abandon yourself bit. In the practice of stillness, one of the first things we learn is the power of presence. Not forced presence, not the type where you sit still but your mind is running. True presence, the kind that is relaxed, aware and non-reactive. That type of presence has nothing to prove. It doesn't chase attention, it doesn't need applause, it simply is. And when you embody that type of presence in a relationship, it is the greatest gift you can give. Because it says, I am not here to impress you, I am here to be with you. That space invites honesty. It invites clarity. It allows both people to show up without needing to perform, without needing to win each other's affection through effort. This is where love deepens. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet, shared truth. When you let go of performance, you allow others to meet your real self. And yes, sometimes that means they will walk away. But what leaves when you stop performing was never meant for you. It was attached to your act, not your essence. Let it go. When you are no longer afraid to be seen as you are, the relationships that remain are based on something deeper than admiration. They are based on alignment, and alignment does not require perfection. It only requires honesty. The people who truly resonate with your being will not ask you to shrink. They will not be threatened by your depth, your silence, your complexity. They will not need you to pretend to be happy when you're hurting, or pretend to be strong when you're tired. They will not need a performance. They will sit with your truth and share their own. Sometimes people misunderstand the idea of unconditional love. They think it means tolerating anything, accepting everyone, and never having boundaries. But that is not love. That is fear wearing love's clothing. True love has standards. Not standards that demand perfection from others, but standards that honor authenticity. When you love from a grounded place, you are not desperate for connection. You are open to it, but not at the cost of yourself. And that openness allows the right kind of people to step forward. Those who are also tired of the performance, who are also seeking something real. You cannot beg for love and be authentic at the same time, because begging always distorts your truth. It places the other person on a pedestal and yourself in a position of lack. But in reality, love is not a hierarchy. It is not one person proving their worth and the other bestowing affection. It is two people standing equally in their truth and choosing to walk together for as long as that truth is in harmony. The moment performance enters, the balance is lost. One begins to give too much, the other begins to take too little, and what remains is not love. It is dependency wrapped in the illusion of connection. To love without performing is to have the courage to be disliked. It is to understand that not everyone will resonate with your truth, and that is okay. Because you would rather be alone in your integrity than surrounded by people who only love a version of you that is not real. This path may feel lonely at times, but over time it becomes peaceful. Because you are no longer living to be chosen, you are living as a choice you have already made. To be yourself fully, unapologetically, and without compromise. And from that place, the love that finds you will not be confused. It will not ask you to explain your worth. It will simply recognize it and offer its presence in return. When we speak of boundaries, most people think of them as walls meant to keep others out. But in truth, boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges. Bridges that connect self-respect with love, clarity with connection, and peace with presence. To have boundaries is to recognize that your energy, time, and emotions are sacred. It is the understanding that love cannot grow where there is no respect, and respect cannot exist where boundaries are constantly crossed. You teach people how to treat you not through words, but through the standards you live by and the limits you consistently enforce. And if you are always available, always compromising, always saying yes while your heart screams no, then you are teaching others that your peace is negotiable, that your value is dependent on their comfort. But real love does not require that sacrifice. Real love honors the boundary because it honors the person behind it. When you beg to be loved, you start loosening those boundaries in small ways. At first it seems harmless. You let something slide. You ignore the discomfort in your chest. You say it's okay when it is not. And each time you override your intuition for the sake of keeping someone close, you lose a little more of yourself. You might still smile, you might still laugh, but inside there is an erosion taking place, a slow fading of your inner voice, until one day you realize you no longer recognize who you've become in the name of being accepted. And that realization is not a collapse, it is a call. A quiet whisper from the soul saying, come back. Come back to the place where love did not cost your dignity. Come back to the space where your needs were not an inconvenience, but a compass. Boundaries are the language of self-worth. They say, I matter, not more than you, but not less than you either. They say, I love you, but I will not lose myself to keep you. They say, I am here, but I am not here to be used, overlooked, or diminished. And this type of clarity often makes people uncomfortable. Not because it is wrong, but because it is rare. People are used to control, disguised as affection, manipulation, dressed as passion, and fear packaged as commitment. When you show up with calm firmness, when you are rooted in what you will and will not allow, it forces others to confront their own behavior. Some will rise to meet you in that honesty, others will leave. Either way, the ones who stay will be those who can love you without requiring you to abandon yourself. To set boundaries is not an act of rejection. It is an invitation to relate differently, to connect more consciously, to love without control. It requires courage. Because not everyone will understand your no. Some may take it personally. Others may try to guilt you. But remember, those who benefit from your lack of boundaries are often the ones most threatened by them. Their discomfort is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that something is shifting. You are no longer moving from fear. You are moving from self-respect. And in that shift, you begin to feel lighter, clearer, more honest. You are no longer performing to be loved. You are protecting what makes you lovable in the first place, your truth. In the path of mastery, we do not train to control others. We train to master ourselves. And boundaries are a form of discipline. They are the discipline of presence, of knowing when to stay and when to walk away, of knowing what is yours to carry and what is not. You cannot carry someone else's inability to love you the way you deserve. That is their lesson, not your burden. And if you continue to accept love that comes with confusion, delay, or disrespect, you are telling yourself that your peace is worth sacrificing. But peace is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Without it, even love becomes chaotic. With it, love becomes rooted. There is a kind of freedom that only comes when you stop negotiating your worth, when you stop explaining why your needs matter, when you stop making excuses for the behavior of others and start taking responsibility for what you allow. That freedom is not loud, it is not rebellious, it is steady, it is the quiet knowing that you are enough. Not when someone finally sees it, but now, right here, as you are. And from that place, boundaries are not weapons. They are tools. Tools that shape your relationships, filter your circle, and guard the light within you. Because that light, once dimmed by desperation, now shines with clarity. And those who are meant for you will not be blinded by it. They will be drawn to it. They will honor it. They will meet you in its warmth, not with demands, but with presence. Not with pressure, but with peace. To heal the need to beg for love, we must begin where the pain started. Not in the relationships that failed us as adults, but in the moments of childhood when we learned that love must be earned. Healing begins not with blaming others, but with the decision to see yourself clearly and fully for the first time. Many people are walking through life wearing armor, not because they are strong, but because they were once unprotected. The child who was not heard becomes the adult who feels invisible. The child who was only praised when performing becomes the adult who ties their value to productivity. The child who was abandoned learns to chase connection, thinking that if they just try hard enough, no one will leave again. These are not just patterns, they are survival instincts. But what kept you safe before is now keeping you stuck. Healing means gently taking that armor off, piece by piece, not by force, but by awareness. When you feel the need to beg for love, something deep within is not asking for romance. It is asking for reassurance. It is asking, am I worthy? Am I enough? Will you stay? And if the answer has always been uncertain, then you will do anything to get it, even if it means betraying yourself. You begin to chase people who withhold, thinking that if you can earn their affection, you'll finally be safe. You tolerate mixed signals, thinking that their eventual validation will make up for the confusion. But the pain of not being chosen does not come from the person who walks away. It comes from the belief that their leaving confirms your deepest fear. And that belief becomes the root. Until you address that root, you will keep repeating the cycle with different people, hoping for a different outcome. Healing begins the moment you stop trying to be lovable and start remembering that you always were. It is not about changing yourself. It is about returning to yourself. And to return to yourself, you must first meet the parts of you that were exiled. The part that cried and was told to be quiet. The part that wanted and was told it was too much. The part that felt pain and was told to be strong. Those parts did not disappear. They were just pushed aside, but they never stopped longing for love. When you ignore them, you seek external affection to fill the inner gap. But no amount of love from others can reach the parts of you that you are still rejecting. That is why healing is not about finding someone else. It is about turning inward and saying, I see you now. I hear you. And I will not abandon you anymore. This is not a quick process. It is slow, intentional, and often painful, because it means grieving the love you didn't receive. It means allowing yourself to feel what you once had to suppress. It means learning to sit with discomfort, rather than escaping it through discomfort, rather than escaping it in mirror your unhealed wounds. But on the other side of that discomfort is freedom. when you no longer fear being alone, you no longer accept relationships that make you feel lonely, when you no longer doubt your worth, you no longer chase people to prove it. When you trust your own presence, you no longer beg for anyone else's. Healing also means setting a new standard for yourself. Not a standard of perfection, but a standard of truth. You begin to notice how your body responds when something isn't right. You begin to listen to your intuition instead of overriding it. You begin to protect your peace, not because you are guarded, but because you have learned that peace is the soil where love grows. This self-awareness is what transforms the way you relate to others. You stop needing people to rescue you. You stop needing them to validate you. You show up as a whole person, not a broken one seeking to be fixed. And when two whole people meet, they do not complete each other. They complement each other. Their love is not built on need, but on choice. And that type of love does not require begging. It flows naturally because it is rooted in truth. As you heal, you will begin to notice that the same situations no longer pull you in. The same people no longer attract you. The same patterns no longer define you. That is how you know you are no longer operating from your wounds, you are operating from your wisdom. You are no longer reacting, you are responding. You are no longer seeking, you are creating. You are no longer trying to be chosen, you are choosing yourself. And from that space, love no longer feels like a game. It feels like peace. It feels like alignment. It feels like home. True healing brings you back to the stillness where nothing is missing. Right? In that stillness, love is no longer something you beg for. Right? It is something you recognize in yourself, something you give without fear, something you receive without question, because you know who you are, and that knowing can never be taken from you again. Never beg to be loved, because real love does not need convincing, it does not require sacrifice of your dignity, and it never asks you to abandon yourself. When you chase love from a place of emptiness, you find yourself molding, shrinking, and performing just to be seen. But the moment you return to your own truth, you realize the love you were begging for from others is the love you first needed to give to yourself. Boundaries, self-awareness, inner healing, these are not walls to push others away. They are the doors through which only the right kind of love can enter. The kind that sees you, respects you, and meets you where you are without needing you to change. To walk this path is not easy. It requires courage, stillness, and discipline. But what it leads to is worth everything. Peace, authenticity, and connection rooted in truth. And in that space, love is no longer something you beg for, it is something you become.